First and foremost, you have to tailor your communication to your audience. You have to have a clear goal. To me, a goal has three parts: information, emotion, and action. What do you want people to know? How do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? Anybody will be a better communicator if they have a clear goal in mind. And having a clear goal is predicated on what you want to say and who you're saying it to. So it has an added benefit of forcing you to think about your audience. If people have a goal, they will have more focus and they will make sure that their message is more targeted.
Hello, and welcome to FranklinCovey on Leadership. I'm your host, Will Hodling, FranklinCovey's head of product. In these conversations, we talk with many of the world's leadership experts on the mistakes, mindsets, and methods that help them become the people they are today. We hope that their hard-earned insights help accelerate you on your journey. Today's guest is Matt Abrahams. Matt Abrahams is a lecturer at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business and one of the world's experts on effective communication and public speaking. Matt is the author of 2 books, Think Faster, Talk Smarter, and Speaking Up Without Freaking Out. Matt also hosts a widely regarded podcast about communication, and he's advised and coached world leaders across both politics and business. In today's conversation, we'll cover practical advice for how to become a better communicator, discuss the ways in which communication is ultimately about connection, and give you practical tips that you can leave with to communicate better today. Matt Abrahams, welcome to FranklinCovey on Leadership.
Excited to be here with you, Will. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm very excited for today's conversation. So let's go ahead and dive right in. You are famous for helping people be ready when they're not totally ready yet. You have developed this great 3-part structure: what, so what, now what, to help people speak more effectively, extemporaneously. Let's practice what we preach. And I would love for you to show this framework in action. What is the best way for somebody to be a better communicator?
So to be a better communicator, first and foremost, you need to really focus your mindset and then work on your messaging. This is important because both aspects of that come together whenever you're put on the spot and need to present. So the first step is to really think through, how do I focus my attention on my anxiety, on being present? And then the second step is really about, how do I leverage structures and frameworks to help me? So in my response, I told you what it was, why it's important, and what the next steps were. So I actually demonstrated what, so what, now what by answering your question.
Absolutely. Talk to me about the evolution to get to that framework. What has been the process to arrive at that?
Yeah, so it's not just this framework. I would argue that just structure in general, a logical connection of ideas, is what's critical. So as I began my work trying to help people be better communicating in general, but specifically in the moment spontaneously, which if you think about it is most of our communication, it really had to do with helping people have a roadmap to follow. Many people feel very uncomfortable without a net. And when we speak in a planned fashion, we will tend to memorize or over-rehearse. And we know that that's detrimental. But when we speak spontaneously, we don't even have that opportunity to help us feel better. So what can we use? And the best analogy I can use is a roadmap. A roadmap gives you directionality, a place to start, a place to end. And that's where this idea of crafting structure. Now, I certainly didn't come up with the idea of structure around communication. That's been around for millennia. But this particular structure was just a really nice, clear, concise way to solve many of our spontaneous speaking situations, be it giving feedback, giving an update, explaining a new concept, answering a question. So I really like this particular structure, and it's easy to remember.
Yeah, very catchy and easy to remember indeed. Tell me about your background and experience. What led you to become a communication expert? Why did you decide communication is such an important topic that you want to focus your life's work on it?
Well, I have always been fascinated by communication. I don't want to take you back too far, but my father was a lawyer. My mother is a teacher. Growing up, I was surrounded by the importance of communication. My father was always, how do we be clear and concise? How do we make sure we're very well organized? My mother was always, how do we make it engaging? How do we make it interesting for people? So I was always surrounded by these ideas of communication. When it came to spontaneous speaking, with my last name of Abrahams, AB, I always went first in school. So I was always called on to do things spontaneously. And so seeing the importance of communication growing up, having to experience it when I came to the university level and found that you could study this stuff, it was a no-brainer. It was very interesting to me. I worked for 10 years in industry and saw very directly how people's abilities to communicate directly impacted their success, not only their career success, but their impact on the organization. So when I had the opportunity to study it, to teach it, it to me was just a very natural fit. I am fascinated by communication, and I think all of us can reflect on how it can help us be better at what we do.
Building on that last point of seeing people who succeeded in their careers because of communication, could you share a expert communicator who really impresses you, and what is a lesson learned from them?
Yeah, so I'm going to share one of my bosses. When I was working in high tech, I ran learning and development for organizations, something very familiar to you. And I had a boss, and she was amazing. And what she was so good at were three things. One, she had the ability to connect, to be present. When you were talking to her, you felt like she was fully with you. Many people are very distracted. I believe attention is our most precious commodity today. And really focused, somebody who focuses on you is giving you a gift. They're saying, I'm here for you now. And she was able to do that. She was also very organized and clear in her communication. Many of us ramble. Many of us take people on a journey of our discovery of what we want to say as we're saying it. And the ability to be clear and concise was really important. And finally, she demonstrated a lot of empathy and concern. So she was able to engage. She was able to be present and focused and just be very empathetic. And those are all learnable skills. And when you deploy them, not only are you more successful because people understand what you need, but people actually end up liking you and wanting to help. And she was a great example of that.
Yeah. You coach a lot of people now. You coach leaders, executives, I'm sure probably politicians you can't talk about, et cetera. What is the biggest bang for your buck in intervention when you're coaching new leaders? Getting somebody to speak in paragraphs and not in bullet points, that it varies structures, maybe a slightly harder skill. Is there something that's very high impact and easy to implement?
Certainly. I mean, there are lots of things. First and foremost, you have to tailor your communication to your audience. You have to have a clear goal. To me, a goal has three parts: information, emotion, and action. What do you want people to know? How do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? Anybody will be a better communicator if they have a clear goal in mind. And having a clear goal is predicated on what you want to say and who you're saying it to. So it has an added benefit of forcing you to think about your audience. If people have a goal, they will have more focus and they will make sure that their message is more targeted. So I encourage everybody, if there's one thing you want to do to improve your communication, make sure going into it, I don't care if it's writing or speaking, in person or virtual, synchronous or asynchronous, have a clear goal in mind. What do you want the audience to know? How do you want them to feel? And what do you want them to do? That'll get you there.
FranklinCovey, we talk about one of the habits is start with the end in mind. And so certainly having that clear goal out the gate, obviously very important. You talk a lot about audience. I've heard you speak before about the importance of being audience obsessed. Kind of practically, what does that look like? What do you suggest for people who are giving a speech to how do they become audience obsessed?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, you have to get your overall purpose right. And the overall purpose is not just to get information out. Many of us feel like success is, I've said what I had to say, I wrote what I had to write, I'm done. That's not it. It's, did my audience receive the message that I wanted? So we have to make that cognitive flip to be audience-centric, audience-focused. Once you've done that, you have to do reconnaissance, reflection, and research about who that audience is. And I would argue there are four main categories to think about. First, what is their knowledge level? We have all been victimized by speakers who start too deep or too high level for our knowledge. It's frustrating. If you already know it, you're bored. If you don't know it, you're panicked. So we need to think about what's the knowledge level and how do we need to scaffold people to the level we want them or need them to be. Second, what's their attitude? Are they likely to be in favor or not for what we're saying? You should craft different content based on if they're going to be favorable or not. Third, most important, I would argue on this list, is what are their likely areas of resistance, hesitation, and concern? When people are listening to you, reading your writing, they're always filtering it through their areas of resistance, hesitation, and concern. Maybe they're afraid it costs too much money, takes too much time, has too much risk. Think about that, and then you can adjust your messages to hopefully reduce some of that resistance. And then the fourth is what motivates people. We've known a long time in the psychological literature that if you can link what you're advocating for to what motivates people, they're much more likely to go along with it. So knowing your audience is first understanding it's about them, it's not about you, and then think about what's their knowledge, attitudes, resistance, and motivation.
All of that is great advice. And candidly, I don't mean this dismissively. It's not rocket science, but most people don't do it day to day. Great communication requires a level of intentionality. It requires a level of like metacognition or conscientiousness. How do you encourage people to get into that mindset where they are actually intentional about the communication and can go through those 4 steps?
Yeah, so there are several ways to do it. One way I ask people to do it is I ask people to reflect on a time where they were not so successful in their communication and the implications of that. And when people reflect and they say, yeah, that kind of sucked, that wasn't helpful, or it caused issues. And then I ask them to reflect on a time where things did go well. And that delta often helps motivate people to say, yeah, I should work on this. I do see the value of it. You know, we make this assumption that because we've been communicating for a long time that we're good at it, and that's not necessarily true. You know, I tell people at the highest level, as a teacher, as a coach, as a writer, a podcaster, my whole goal is to turn habits into choices. Many of us just act out of what we've always done, and if we can re-envision how we communicate, it'll help us a lot.
I think I appreciate your emphasis there on mindsets and the idea of if you've been communicating for a long time, you just think, oh, I'm a good communicator, and you're not intentional about it. I think the inverse is true as well. There are a lot of people who have been communicating for a long time who say, oh, I'm just not a good communicator and I can't do anything about it. They believe that being a good communicator is dependent on being charismatic, and being charismatic is an innate trait. You know, I'm not as charismatic as a Barack Obama or a Matthew McConaughey, whoever might be their orator of choice.
For you.
Well, yeah, you know, whoever their orator of choice might be. What do you say to people who say, I'm not charismatic and thus I can't be a great speaker?
Yeah, so I really would ask everybody to step back and just think about what communication does. Communication is all about connection. It's about connecting your thoughts, feelings, and ideas to another person. And while charisma can help, it can also detract, all of us can communicate. We can get our ideas, thoughts, and feelings across. Now, we can hone and develop those skills to increase the likelihood and how people feel and experience that. But communication is a learned skill. All of us can get better. I have seen it countless times in the work that I do, and I wouldn't do the work I did if I didn't think people could get better. Certainly, some people start with an advantage based on experience or personality traits. Perhaps people are extroverted, but the reality is this: we can all get better. We just have to focus on it and remind ourselves that communication is about connection. It's not about perfection. It's not about doing it right. There is no right way to communicate. There are better ways and worse ways. And when you reframe it that way, all of a sudden, not only does it become available to everybody, but it becomes exciting for everybody.
So we couldn't agree more about communications, about connection. We at FranklinCovey have a communication solution that focuses on writing and presenting and meetings. And at the core of it is this mindset of you communicate to connect. So that definitely resonates. I want you to put on, I know you're a professor at GSB, at Stanford's Graduate School of Business. I want you to put on your professorial robes for a second. And we are going to go through an exercise where I'm going to share with you some popular advice about communication. And you're going to decide, do I want to keep this advice? Do I want to toss this advice, or do I want to modify this advice?
Okay, keep, toss, modify. Got it.
Keep, toss, modify. So Professor Abrahams, the first one, speakers should eliminate all filler words.
Toss.
Toss. Okay, say more.
So filler words are normal and natural. In fact, playwrights and screenwriters put them in to make it sound normal. What we want to do is not have them be distracting. And there are things you can do to reduce the fillers, but to eliminate one is virtually impossible. And two, it stresses people out. So normal people have filler words. It's expected. There are some, and depending on where they occur and how frequently they occur, that they become troublesome, but it's not about elimination.
The rest of the interview, I'm going to say it's a great answer all the time.
That would be
I didn't.
annoying, and those we should modify a little bit. But to remove the word "like" from your vocabulary would be disingenuous and would make you sound stiff.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've had the experience of talking to ChatGPT or Gemini, their voice mode. They add in filler words, which I find so fascinating
It's normal
because
and
it is
natural.
that's natural for
They've been
communication.
doing that in theater and movies for forever.
Yeah. So the second one is before giving a big presentation, do the power pose. And so maybe for listeners that don't know what power pose is, maybe explain power pose and
Yes.
then toss, keep, or modify.
So a power pose is where you hold your body in a big position. So there's the starfish where you spread your legs and you put your arms up, or you do the Wonder Woman or Superman where you put your hands by your side. There is a lot of evidence, not just in humans, that when you take a big posture, people see you as more confident. There is some slightly more controversial evidence about if, in fact, it actually changes your perception of your own confidence. So if I hold one of those poses, do I actually become more confident? My take on this, regardless of if it actually works or not, is if you think it works and it makes you feel more confident, do it. If it's all placebo, fine. I have spent a lot of my career trying to help people feel more comfortable and confident communicating, and there are myriad techniques you can use. If this is one that works for you, then do it. So I would say keep it, but it shouldn't be your only attempt. And there is some controversy in the academic world about its impact on us ourselves. To the external world, taking a big posture like that often signals confidence.
Okay, so we'll do a conditional keep on that
Okay,
one.
that's
So next is for people dealing with anxiety when they're speaking. Imagine your audience naked. We've probably all gotten that advice or heard
That's
of
the
that
Brady
advice
Bunch
before.
advice. You're too young to remember the Brady Bunch, but I'm going to modify this one. So the idea of visualization is very powerful. It's one of the oldest techniques used to study on anxiety management. However, visualizing people naked or in their underwear is probably only going to invite more stress or other feelings that would not be beneficial when you're speaking in a high stakes situation. So modify that visualization is a very useful technique, but what you visualize, it's important as well.
What do you suggest people visualize, and why is visualization a powerful
So
technique?
visualizing success has been shown to be incredibly helpful, not just in speaking, but in athletics as well. See yourself doing the activity, see yourself doing it well and being well responded to. There are actually some virtual reality tools that help you do this. So you don't just have to close your eyes and see it yourself. You can actually put on goggles and see it. But there's a lot of research that says that this kind of training of your brain to see success leads you, one, to be more relaxed and comfortable, and two, it helps motivate you to the activity rather than being repulsed or repelled from it.
Change isn't easy, but the way you talk about it matters. FranklinCovey's How to Communicate Change tool walks you through how to share your vision, handle resistance, and lead with empathy. Grab a free copy from the show notes before your next big announcement and help your team navigate change smoothly. So the next piece of advice is one that my mom has been saying since I was 7 years old, which is slow down. How important is it to slow down when speaking?
I get that advice from everybody. I'm curious to know what happened at 7 that led that advice. I've had it my whole life. I can't pinpoint it. Yes. So connection takes time. Connection takes time, and slowing down can be very helpful. Being present can be very helpful. So slowing down your own mind is helpful. Slowing down the rate with which you speak, and slowing down the logic and flow of your information. So I would definitely keep it, and I would encourage everybody to slow down in their communication.
Wonderful. Okay, last piece of common advice that I want to get your feedback on is to memorize your script so that you can focus on body language and connection to the audience and not focus on the exact words you're saying.
Toss it as far away as you humanly can.
Really? Okay.
Memorizing is bad, bad, bad. Here's why. Your brain is like a computer. It's not the best analogy, but on your laptop, phone, or tablet, when you have lots of windows and apps open, each one of those windows and apps is performing less well because they're all sucking the CPU's bandwidth. So each one does less well. Your brain is the same way. If I have a memorized script, I am constantly, as I am communicating, comparing what I'm saying to what I wanted to say. I am taking away precious cognitive bandwidth. I would much rather people have a structure which serves as a roadmap. We talked about what, so what, now what. That's a roadmap. It gets me from the beginning to the end, but I don't have every single word memorized. People who memorize are more likely to forget what they want to say, and they're more likely to be nervous or more nervous than others. So be familiar. Absolutely, you should practice. Have a structure, have a roadmap, but don't memorize word for word. You're setting yourself up for failure when you do that. People are more likely to blank out when they memorize than when they don't.
Okay. I've been a lifelong attempted memorizer on speeches, and it sounds like I've done it all wrong.
I wouldn't say you've done it all wrong. I would encourage you the next time you speak to try to wean away from that. There are baby steps. Maybe you don't memorize word for word, but maybe you become very comfortable with a bullet point outline or a question-based outline. And then from there, move yourself to just being structure-based. You will not only feel more freedom, but your audience will feel more connected. Because when you memorize, your memorized script is between you and your audience, and that gets in the way of connection.
Fascinating. Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, you have coached many leaders. You also have written multiple books on the topic, Think Faster, Talk Smarter. There's a couple of areas that I would love to get your very practical advice on. And the first is building on my imagine your audience naked question earlier. A lot of people go into speeches feeling anxious. There's the amazing Jerry Seinfeld bit that I'm sure you've heard many times before about the number one fear in America is public speaking, and the number two fear in America is of death. And so people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. So how do you help people get over their fears of public speaking?
That's a big question. But I'll start first by saying you can learn to manage your anxiety. It's not about overcoming it. Those of us who study this believe it's part of the human condition to be nervous when you're up in front of other people. We see it in every culture. We see it develop at a certain time in kids' developments. When kids go from kids to early teens, anxiety begins to spike about speaking in front of others, and it stays high for the rest of people's lives. So it's not about overcoming. It's about managing. And in fact, having some anxiety is helpful. It helps you focus, gives you energy. There are two main approaches to managing anxiety. You have to manage symptoms and sources. Symptoms are the things we physiologically experience, and sources are the things that initiate and exacerbate our anxiety. I'll give you one example of each. There are many, many. My first book, Speaking Up Without Freaking Out, is all about these techniques, gives 50 different techniques. Single best thing you can do to manage your symptoms, what happens in your body, is deep belly breathing. If you've ever done meditation, yoga, qigong, tai chi, it is the deep breaths. And interestingly, it is the exhale where the magic happens. So I like to joke, the rule of thumb, or really the rule of lung, is you want your exhale to be twice as long as your inhale. So if I take a 3 count in, I take a 6 count out, and what that does is it slows down my autonomic nervous system. My heart rate slows down, my respiratory rate slows down, my speaking rate slows down, the shakiness abates a bit. Just by deep breathing, 2 or 3 of those can really help. Now, there are many other things you can do for many other symptoms people have, but if I only had one to pick, deep breath. In terms of sources of anxiety, we already talked about one, memorizing. We memorize because we want to get it right. The desire to get it right gets in the way of doing it well at all. Another source of anxiety is our goal. I've already said having a goal is important, but for many of us, our goal makes us nervous. I'm afraid I won't achieve the goal. My students won't fear they won't get the good grade. The entrepreneurs I coach are afraid they won't get the funding. You might be afraid one of your projects won't be supported. All of that is concern about a potential negative future outcome. And the way to short circuit that, to be less nervous, is to be very present oriented. And you can do that in many ways. Do like an athlete, listen to a song or a playlist. Do something physical, walk around the building. I like to say tongue twisters. That sounds crazy. But a tongue twister, you can't say it right if you're not present. And if you say it out loud, you warm up your voice. Many nervous people don't warm up. As an athlete, you would warm up. As a musician, you would warm up. So we need to warm up. So the way to manage anxiety, and it's not like a light switch, it takes time, is to address symptoms as well as sources.
Very helpful. It's also fascinating, just meta for me going through this interview. All of your answers are so structured and clear.
Thank you.
I often think, okay, I'm going to give a follow-up question, but you've covered it holistically. So you definitely practice what you preach.
Thank you.
The other area of anxiety in terms of speaking is often people at parties, small talk, connecting to strangers, etc. What's your recommendation, advice, practical guidance for how you can develop a close-knit connection quickly with someone?
Thank you for allowing me to speak about small talk. I think small talk is critical. Big things happen in small talk. Many of us fear small talk because we don't know how to do it. So I want to give you 3 suggestions. First and foremost, you have to reframe what small talk is. I have a podcast. It's called Think Fast, Talk Smart. One of my guests, her name is Rachel Greenwald. She's an academic and a matchmaker. She's a real expert in small talk, and she taught me this, and I like to pass it on to everybody. Small talk, connecting quickly, is not about being interesting. It is about being interested. Your goal is simply to be interested in the other person, asking questions, commenting what's on the environment. My mother-in-law had a black belt in small talk. She was amazing. And her trick was 3 simple words: tell me more. By asking questions and giving people space to tell more, you actually connect and you learn a lot. It's a wonderful way to initiate small talk. Now, the other part and the other problem with small talk is getting out of it. Many of us are like, I formed a connection. We've said all we need to say. Yeah, well, right. Everybody relies on biology. I got to go to the bathroom. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. This backfired on me. I was talking to somebody. I was ready to leave. I said, oh, thank you. I'm going to go use the bathroom. And he said, me too. And then we had to have the conversation for another half hour. Rachel taught me another technique. She calls it the white flag, not for surrender, but if you know anything about auto racing, they signal the last lap by raising the white flag. You signal that there's one more lap. So in small talk, I might say, hey, Will, this has been a great conversation. In a minute, I want to go over there and talk to somebody else. But before I leave, I'm curious about your trip to Utah. So what I've done is I've signaled I'm going to leave. So you're prepared, I'm prepared. But I have one more thing I want to have a conversation with you about. So that's my final lap. So when we actually do finish, you feel it's complete, I feel it's complete. We've both had time to think about what's going to come next. It's a beautiful way to exit. And then my final bit of advice in small talk, the third thing, is you want to make sure that you are listening actively. Many of us in small talk are so busy scanning around the room, where should I be? This FOMO going on. Be present, listen. And when you listen as if you are going to paraphrase. So that is, what's the bottom line? What's the key essence? And then when the person's done speaking, maybe you do actually paraphrase. There's a lot of research that says when you speak a paraphrase, you actually demonstrate that you're validating the person, and that leads to connection, trust, and a better relationship. So start with observation and just be interested. End with the white flag, signaling you're going to leave before you do, and listen through paraphrasing can really help you connect.
So I've read before about the importance of paraphrasing and active listening. And my fear personally when I do it is that it comes off as formulaic. And I think this is the case with a lot of the recommendations and structures. If you follow them to the letter of the law, you will sound like a conversational robot, not a human. And that's the kind of worst case scenario. So how do you respond to people who are nervous about coming off too formulaic, structured, scripted by following all of these kind of conversational guidelines?
The fear of being scripted is one that looms large for many people. A way to manage that is, 1, practice. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes. And 2, to realize that when people are really engaged in communication with you, they're paying attention to what you say. So as long as you don't signal that you are doing the activity, then people aren't going to necessarily pay attention. So if I simply do what I just did to you, I don't know if you noticed, I paraphrased what you said as I started this answer. I don't think it felt uncomfortable or like I was using a script. But if I would have said, so what I hear you asking is, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's pulling on a technique on me. Clearly it's something that he's been taught to do. I think many people, because they're so engaged in what's being said, they don't pull out of that unless you highlight it so much so that then it feels awkward and uncomfortable.
Yeah, that makes sense. So FranklinCovey, as you know, is a leadership company. We train hundreds of thousands, millions of leaders around the world. One of our most popular solutions is 6 critical practices for leading a team. We talk a lot about one-on-ones. One-on-ones are the foundation, the bedrock of a management report relationship. What is an advice you would have to a manager about how to communicate effectively in a one-on-one?
So first and foremost, I think communication is operationalized leadership. So how you lead is how you communicate. And so one-on-ones, big presentations, all are super important. 2 things that I would suggest. First, be very clear about what the objectives are for whatever the meeting is, so people understand. So it's about expectation setting. Another tool that many people don't think about in terms of setting up one-on-ones or other meetings, the single most underutilized expectation setting tool, I believe, is the calendar invite. You can do so much in the calendar invite to set expectations for what's going to happen, what you expect will happen after the fact. Just what you name the meeting can matter. So instead of calling it one-on-one meeting, call it something else that's more interesting, motivational, inviting. Set an agenda. Talk about a particular issue, challenge, question that will be discussed. Take the time to set expectations up front. I am sure, Will, you have been in circumstances where you went into a meeting, one-on-one or not, where you thought it was going to be about one thing and it was about something else. That's very unsettling. So good leaders set expectations in one-on-one meetings. Good leaders also listen, and listen first. So start by asking a question and listen to the answer. You do those 2 things, I think not only will your one-on-ones be better, but I think your entire communication will be better.
Absolutely. So I want to move to our lightning round, and then we're going to end with our final question we ask every guest. So first question in the lightning round, what is a speech that you love and have watched multiple times?
Oh, there are so many. When you're in my profession, I'm going to actually deviate a little bit. I do a lot of work on spontaneous speaking in the moment. And I think the single best spontaneous speaker I have ever seen, and I did see him live, was Robin Williams. And you might not like his humor, but he was amazing at speaking in the moment. It is full of curse words and swearing, but his bit about the origin of golf, I think, is amazing. It is amazing. It is an amazing, well-structured joke. It is amazing in terms of the way he delivers it. And I find him just a truly amazing communicator. Probably not the person you thought I would say, but it is somebody who I have studied a lot. And if any of your listeners or viewers want to get a laugh and are okay with some naughty words, it is an amazing comedy routine.
Great. Well, I know what I'll be watching right after this. Relatedly, maybe Robin Williams will come up again in this answer. What is a movie that you think has amazing dialogue and speaking?
Oh, that's a great question. A movie that has lots of dialogue and speaking. Several are coming to my mind. If it was a TV show, I would say The West Wing, because I thought the way they did, regardless of your politics, I thought the way they did dialogue, Aaron Sorkin is a master at that. In terms of a movie, I guess I would say Good Will Hunting. It is a Robin Williams movie, and as I've studied his work, there's a lot of good, deep dialogue there.
Lovely. Well, The West Wing and Good Will Hunting are 2 of my favorite media of all time. So you're speaking my language there. Third and final lightning round question for you. What is a book that you recommend regularly that's not your own? And it could be fiction or nonfiction.
There are 2, very easy for me. One is called Improv Wisdom by Patricia Ryan Madsen. It is an amazing, it's a thin book, but it's all about how do we take ideas from the world of improvisation and apply them to our lives. Every leader should read this book and do the activities. The second is a book called Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. Chip teaches at the business school. Dan, I've gotten to know as well. It is not a communication book, but it is the best communication book I have ever read.
I remember reading Made to Stick probably 15 years ago, and the success framework
still holds up.
Still in my mind. Awesome. All right, final question we ask every guest. We are FranklinCovey is a leadership company. Who is a leader that has greatly influenced you, and what lesson can we all take from them?
I have studied martial arts for over 40 years. My sensei, my teacher, he is a leader of his school, a leader of people. He has had a profound impact on my life. And his message we've talked about already: slow down, be present.
Wonderful. Well, I will know who not to fight against if we ever do this podcast in person. I will not threaten you in any way. But Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. It has been absolutely chock-a-block with great insights, ideas, practical advice. I'm sure our audience will really appreciate the direction and guidance. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Will. It's been a true pleasure.
Wonderful. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another week of FranklinCovey on Leadership. We hope you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and join us again next week for another episode.